Hey, what's going on? A lot of poets on that lazy Sunday morning, they pour a cup of coffee or tea or scotch or whatever it is, and they're going to pull out their notebook and they're going to find their little nook and see if they can't crank something out, right? Because you got to produce. You got to produce. So we're going to look at a lot of poets here who are trying to produce and see how they come up with, okay? Just like Alexander Pope said, what oft was thought but never so well expressed. All these poets are going to start with this top-of-mind idea, which is they're looking out the window on a Sunday morning trying to find something to write about. Let's see what they come up with here, and let's see what role quality and experience play in their attempt. Let's start with dissonance and still. Crows outside my window and the dancing trees make me think of intergenerational trauma, and in the distance, a lone red-tailed hawk reminds me of perspective, though perspectivizing may just be a way not to feel what I feel, something the crows, caws, and squawks irritate me back to. Okay. I'm going to pause here, very, very strong opening. Bold opening on this poem. You guys know I love a bold opening. Let's look at some of these details here. The dancing trees, it's probably been said before, right? But still, it's a well-timed where it is rhythmically in this line. It's almost iambic pattern there. And then going from that immediately into this second line of intergenerational trauma creates this quite a shock for the reader, really interesting. And then we're really, really going to dial in the observation. This lone here, to me, is a little bit calling attention to itself as an adjective. But the red-tailed hawk is very beautiful here because it has this beautiful visual of the red, which is then blood. And it's a predator, it sees keenly too. Hawks have incredible vision, so it reminds me of perspective, though perspectivizing. So again, this poem is attentive to detail. It is able to select and heighten this bird watching effect. It's creating a bold contrast from the beginning, and its use of rhythm of this semi-iambic and its sense of timing of syllables is strong. Hawk and trauma. We have some good assonance here. Just a lot of little subtle details. Trees remind, a little bit of a stretch, but that the long sound of the trees then becomes kind of tautened a little bit with these fast syllables that happen after it. At any rate, fun effort, and shows a poet who clearly has a lot of experience doing this thing. This is Laura McCullough. Laura McCullough is all over the place. Again, not a kind of a household name, top tier type poet, but very, very experienced practitioner whose work you can find all over the place. This is in the Aurorian. The Aurorian is no longer in print. It had a 20-year run or 30-year run, but I did have some old issues of the Aurorian, and pulled this gem out. So very nice piece. Let's look at another Through the Window. Again, there's our conceit, right? You're looking out the window. What are you going to write about? Let's see what you can do. Early morning, a small glimpse of cobalt blue, light through a veil of mist and glint of pearl on frosty paths. Silver tip, the larches gleam in this white light, strong impression of the sky widening. So to me, this silver tip, the larches gleam is just a very beautiful line. We have this nice midline caesura, so we have this nice pause here, especially after this first stanza here with a little less caesura. So we have a good amount of momentum coming in. This is a really good place for us to kind of gather up our breath. Silver tipped with the those front of the mouth sounds slow us down further. And this gleam really feels like a huge amount of relief and illumination that occurs here. So some lovely writing here. Again, this poem is really just going to relentlessly observe. It's not really going to do that much comparison. It's certainly not going to do anything like intergenerational trauma. It just wants to really, really, really almost like a notebook type of way, like a study or a sketchbook. Really just describe and show what language can do when put to a very, very narrow service. So it's an interesting gambit here. Rather than try to expand the scope of the poem, rather than try to grow or dilate and cover a lot of different ground, we're going to be focus, 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 focus. It's a good skill to have. It's a very, very good skill to have. Nicely done here by Doris Cordy in Acumen out of the UK. Okay, let's go to another. Again, I don't know exactly if this is a looking out the window. I feel like, we can get away with calling it a look out the window because on Love and Squirrels, two crazy squirrels here. Okay, so kind of thing you'd see looking out the window. Maybe on a park bench and stretch it a little bit, okay? Two crazy squirrels, a boy and a girl, scrabble through the tree with such blinding speed, fluff tails twitch and twirl, his chase to her tease. So again, we can see that this poem isn't really super grammatical. It's a lot of fractured phrases. There's not that much use. There's no use of punctuation at all. So it's just kind of sort of like magnet poetry, just kind of words kind of shotgunned out onto the page. This parenthetical, a boy and a girl, doesn't advance or help. I mean, you're kind of wasting a critical second line. This crazy, it's kind of like crazy, zany, wild, wacky, world of squirrels is kind of shows perhaps a lack of conviction of the poet, or just that they really haven't found their subject yet, that they need to keep looking and keep studying and keep observing what it is about the squirrel's behavior that is moving or profound or worth writing about. Again, this is going to be a Reddit poem, so I just dug through new and tried to find, is there anything that would be close to a looking out the window poem? This is the closest that I could come, and I wanted to show us kind of what real new green poets would come up with or stumble on when they're facing the same problem space that these more experienced poets face. Now, you might like this poem more. You might think that those other poems, you didn't like them, or they're pretentious, or they're boring, which you're totally entitled to do. That's not the point here. The point is to show these variation in technique and skill. You can feel free to like whatever you want to. Okay, blue shirt. So let's jump up here. Let's see if we can find some good stuff. Blue shirt. He waters the garden as if he's a high priest of rain, dousing the heads of his supplicants. From where would flat beans, squash, and kale be without his benediction? And there's a line, from inside the kitchen window, I see him in his blue shirt, straw hat, harvesting herbs. So again, we're not looking out at nature. We're looking out at a domestic partner, presumably. And so this poem is definitely going to go a very, very different direction as a result. But again, I just want us to pay attention not to that this poem, its topic is going to be somewhat different. All these poems are ultimately going to find different subjects and different commonplaces and different approaches. I want to look at this how the phrasing here is very confident. He waters the garden as if. You see this first line already introduces a proposal, a metaphor, as if. So this then metaphor, that kind of a heroic simile, can be sustained throughout this whole stanza here, becoming a high priest of rain. Okay. So this is a hyperbole. We don't actually literally believe that this beloved is a high priest of rain, but it shows us a way to, the crazy squirrels. The other poet also felt an obligation to kind of give us a proposal or situate or show us we're going to be a this type of thing poem, or change the mood or register. So this poet here introduces this idea that we're going to be able to compare a banal act of watering an herb garden with kind of sacred duties and rites. And that also gives them this ability. There's this litany here: flat beans, squash, and kale. It's a very nice litany timed here. And then to end with this benediction, it's just supplicants and benediction. Kind of a little bit of a flex here that this poet can choose the right words and kind of straddle the fence. They're both able to describe in detail the actual literal thing happening of the garden and the figurative event happening at the same time. So that's discipline and control of language that takes practice to do that. And some people aren't going to be able to do that until they apply themselves consistently to it. And let's have a look. Okay. Indeed, this is published in the Comstock Review just several years ago. June Blumenson. Don't know June's work, but just picking out some old journals I had lying around, flipping through, looking to see if I could find some poems that are looking out a window. And nice work. Solid technique. Okay, let's keep going. Okay. Pastoral constructions. Okay. The full moon glows behind the cedar. Then the sun rises, orange and yellow. Birds make the only sounds. The 7 goats stand near a field of vines. Yes, there's a satellite dish, and next door, a pool. Eventually, a car, from the sound of it, takes the road, yet birds ghost through the pine trees. So, there's a lot going on here. This is a little bit of higher density of poetic language. So its departures from normal speech are going to be a little bit more. This poem also fractures a little bit some of the syntax, but does so in a very deliberate and intentioned manner. Look at how we get this very poetical opening. The full moon glows behind the cedar. So this tells the reader, you can trust me. I'm going to give you poetic language and observation that's going to be invigorating and enjoyable to you. This is going to be poetry with a capital P. I'm going to deliver on promises to really give you visually and orally rich and satisfying stuff. And there's a little bit of diminution after that. Then the sun rises, orange and yellow. So the orange and yellow is not as big as the full moon glows behind the cedar. It's not as luscious. And then again, things get a little smaller more. Birds make the only sounds. Again, which syllable is emphasized is also something after this full stop. The birds make the only. The rhythm here is confident. And then the 7 goats. 7 goats. It's why 7? The 7 number, the specificity there, again, shows this kind of power of observation and willingness to want to be specific and enumerate and count and show us. Just as the number of syllables we're expending here seems deliberate. The 7 could be just an accident. They could have written 8 and no one would know. But 7, the sound too, with the V sound. All this stuff, the 7 goes with the vines, right? So we get some consonants going. There's just a lot. I mean, it's very, very dense. Then there's a volta. There's a shift in tone here, and the register of the poem shifts. Yes, there's a satellite dish and next door a pool. This is, again, surprising. First, we're looking at something that's strictly pastoral, and now it's suburban or vacation homey, and this creates dissonance for the reader. We're not sure. We're now unbalanced. Where's this poem going to be? This parenthetical phrase from the sound of it, then undermines the authority of the speaker. So again, there's just a huge amount of different tools being deployed. It's a very, very, very complicated poem in terms of its surfaces. So it slows the reader down, gives them a lot to think about. Okay. This is Lisa Steinman from her collection Absence and Presence. Lisa Steinman is a professor of English at Reed College. She used to be editor of Hubbub, a literary journal. So again, we're kind of dealing with someone whose practice has been, you could say, the center of her life for decades and decades and decades. Take that as you wish. Again, I'm not saying you have to love this poem, but I'm saying from a technical perspective, the moves it makes dazzle. It seems to me hard to argue with that. Okay, Confession of a Bird Watcher. Okay, the windows are dressed in feathers where the birds have flown against them, then fallen below into the flowers where their bodies lie grounded, still, slowly disappearing each day until all that is left are their narrow, prehensile bones. I have sat at my window now for years, got off my lawn and watched 100 birds mistake the glass for air and break their necks, wondering what to do, how else to live among them and keep my view. All right. Again, maybe the surface isn't quite as complex as Lisa Steinman's, but it's relatively complex. The windows are dressed in feathers where the birds have flown against them. The dressing of the window, that the window would be dressed in a way that a human would put on a costume, or the dress like hair would be dressed. It's a proposal the poem is making about how we see things, about our frames, right? The flown against them. It doesn't say crashed into. It says flown against them. It's a particular deliberate word choice that feels perhaps more poignant, that they are striving against something that they cannot see. Then fallen into the flowers where their bodies lie grounded still, slowly disappearing. These flowers then suggest this funeral scene, and this kind of intense mourning that the poem shifts to very quickly. I don't know, and then it becomes a little bit clinical with the prehensile. Tonally very, very controlled here. This I have to read is, I'm going to write this poem about looking out my window, and I'm going to do it better than all the rest of you because fuck you. I don't know. That's kind of how I read it. That, a little bit of other poets are going to crash into my window. So there's a little bit of hip hop bravura here, almost. Of waking up at the crack of dawn, mowing down MCs like a mowing the lawn. Confessions of a Bird Watcher here. Also, it's difficult. It's difficult for the reader at times with this poem because of the pain of the birds that the speaker seems indifferent to. A lot of big flex here. Really some big flexing going on from Chard de Nord. I believe Chard de Nord was a Vermont poet laureate, served in that capacity for a bit. Certainly big name around here. This is from his collection Interstate. Worth tracking down this poem and giving it a careful read. Like I said, it is kind of quite the smackdown. And you can see we're moving up here. We're moving on up. Okay? Again, you don't have to like it. You might dislike it. I think the technical qualities stand for themselves. I would say these lines are very, very long, prose-like, but there's something that nevertheless is insistently poetic about how he's deployed the language. Okay, moon from any window. The moon from any window is one part, whoever's looking. The part I can't see is everything my sister keeps to herself. One part, my dead brother's sleepless brow. The other part, the time I waste, the time I don't have. But which part is borrowed singing, and which my unfinished crust of bread? Wow. Okay, this is a very rhetorical poem. You see how this poem twists and turns and goes in these unpredictable directions with these rhetorical questions. So rhetoric in poem is how we make an argument, how we question and answer and qualify. This poem is full of these kind of qualifiers. This one part, other part, I don't have, which part, which here. Don't forget the curtain. So it's really, really twisting argument. And it's talking about this fundamental function of metaphor, that one thing is compared to another. There's tenor and vehicle. And this poem is going to use this idea of, what is represented and what is representing. And it's going to twist everything all around and really make this very complicated metaphysical structure out of it. So it's going to kind of echo John Donne type stuff as a result. And then we have these beautiful metaphors too. This crust of bread here is quite something. It's able to deal with life and death, kind of right out the chute, no problem. So I don't know. Again, I don't know if this poem is as much of a flex in that way as Chardin Nord, but it's certainly quite spectacular in its use of rhetoric, especially at a time now in contemporary verse where rhetoric, I think, is perhaps underutilized. This poem is totally unafraid to go for it pretty big time. Let's see who we have here. We have Lee Young Lee out of the Kenyon Review. So we are definitely now, national reputation. Lee Young Lee, top of his game with this poem. Yeah. Certainly a great anthology poem too. A lot of people have read and enjoyed this piece and shared it with friends. Please go forth and do so. Okay, magnificent frigate bird. Frigate. Just frigate, man. Frigate. Is it okay to begin with the obvious? I don't know. You tell me. You're the poet. I am full of stones. Is it okay not to look out this window? There we go. But to look out another. A mentor once said, you can't start a poem with a man looking out a window. Too many men looking out a window. Yeah. What about a woman? Today is haunting. One last orange on the counter. It is a dead fruit. We swallow dead things. Wow. All right, so this poem has a lot of different proposals at the onset, kind of a flurry of different proposals. Again, is more along these rhetorical lines of Lee Young Lee, but it's not convoluted and twisted in terms of its proposals. This is more, moving forward. It moves forward at angles, but it is moving forward. It doesn't twist back on itself quite as much. Is it okay to begin with the obvious? I am full of stones. It's not obvious to me that the speaker's full of stones. Is it obvious to you? Is it obvious to anyone? So that's a bold proposal. Is it okay not to look out this window, but look out another? She's kind of defending our initial attempts to read the poem. The speaker diverts us and doesn't want us to take a conventional path to approach this poem. As we've tried to with these other poems, this poem is basically like, no, I set this trap for you. You can't do that. You're going to have to take a different way. After it's done this look out another here, it's saying, you are going to want to read this poem as looking at this window. But when you go and you look out that window, you're going to find that that's not the window that I wanted you to look out. And I'm over here looking out this window. So you got to come over to this one now. No, come over here. And then it does this big reset, which is, again, going to be a huge flex, just like Chard de Nord. Now, not all poetry is all about the flex, all about dunking on people. But this is certainly going to dunk on some people, right? This is going to grab the microphone here. A mentor said, you can't start a poem with a man looking out a window. Too many men looking out a window. What about a woman? Well, it's almost like a mic drop moment here, because this poem is defying the conventional wisdom, which is don't write another poem on these overused topics. They've been done to death already. How are you going to go over this territory that's already been so successfully covered by those before you? And what this poet wants to say is, I don't care. Give me the football. I can run through the defenses, and then I'm going to spike it. You watch me spike it. I will spike it. Right? And when I do it, it's going to be new because it's my voice. So it's absolutely reinforcing this, what oft was thought but never so well expressed. This poet's going to say, Pope was right. I'm going to express it better. What are they expressing? I'm not exactly sure. This dead fruit, we swallow dead things. And then it pivots again, once in Rio near Leblon. Large seabirds soared over the vast South Atlantic Ocean. I had never seen them before. 8 feet wingspan and gigantic in their confidence. So then now we pivot to the real topic of the poem, the frigate bird. Magnificent frigate bird. So it takes us to this warming up and these false starts and these diversions, and then we're going to get there. I'm sure everything will be tied back in. I'm sure you need to read this poem on your own time, which you absolutely must do, since it's interesting. Again, you don't have to like it to learn from it. From Ada Limon. Sorry I missed the accent that she ought to have, but we get the idea here. It is an Ada Limon poem from her collection, The Suffering Kind. Okay, let's proceed. We have one last poem to look at. This is, again, a classic anthology poem. Really is anthologized quite a bit. And this is a little bit of a cheat since it's not really contemporary. This poet's dead and has been dead for a little while now. But I thought we could just look at it. Again, this isn't technically looking out the window. This is looking out of a hammock. But I thought it was close enough, and I thought it was worthwhile for us to discuss, just because, again, this is going to be a difficult poem to top. And when you write your looking out the window poem, or lying in your garden poem, or whatever it is, you're going to be faced with this challenge of your predecessors. And this one will be difficult. Lying in a hammock, and we will go ahead and reveal here who your predecessor is. In this case, is going to be James Wright. I just found this on the Poetry Foundation, but this poem is relatively well known. Lying on a hammock at William Duffy's farm in Pine Island, Minnesota. Over my head, I see the bronze butterfly asleep on the black trunk, blowing like a leaf in green shadow. Down the ravine behind the empty house, the cowbells follow one another into the distances of the afternoon. To my right, in a field of sunlight between two pines, the droppings of last year's horses blaze up into golden stones. I lean back as the evening darkens and comes on. A chicken hawk floats over looking for home. I have wasted my life. Hard to beat Sweet James there, huh? There's a lot of setup to get to this wasting. Bronze butterfly. So it's not gold. Only nature brings the gold, as Robert Frost said. The butterfly is neither bronze nor gold. It's an organic thing. This green shadow is not actually green. It just appears to be green. It has no color. It's shadow. The cowbells follow one another, so the cows themselves have been elided by this poem. They've been made invisible into the distances of the afternoon. To my right, in a field of sunlight between two pines, the droppings of last year's horses blaze up into golden sun. So finally, we set up with the bronze here. We fake with the bronze, and then we go to the gold. But what's gold? It's bullshit, right? It's literally not bullshit, but horseshit is the gold. Is then compared to the poet's work. Chicken hawk isn't really a hawk, right? So again, there's this diminution there, shrinking effect. We don't think that the chicken hawk will find home, I suppose. I don't know. Or that it's futile. I've wasted my life. I think, I'm explaining the poem away, which in some way makes the poem even worse. I think the inevitability of the imagery, of the sounds of the poem, speak for itself. Yeah. Thanks for joining me. It's been a pleasure to talk about these looking out a window poems with you. And go ahead, write your own. When you pour yourself that cup of coffee and find your nook, feel free to try what others have tried before you. That's the only way you're going to get better. Thanks so much for your time. And hit me up with some comments of what you liked and what you didn't from this crop. Thanks again.